"Honey, I found the perfect one. It's only $32,000. The words, slick with a casual entitlement I had come to despise, drifted from my own living room. Chloe, my daughter-in-law, was perched on the edge of my sofa, the one my late husband Frank and I had bought 25 years ago. She held a glossy catalog splayed open on her lap, as if it were scripture. Only, as if $32,000 was pocket change, a minor inconvenience, and not the sum of 1,000 sacrifices I had made. As if it wasn't my money she was planning to spend. She smiled at my son, Arthur. It was that smile, a bright, hard, weaponized thing she deployed whenever she wanted something expensive. It was the smile that always made Arthur fold. And fold he did. He nodded. My Arthur. My only son. He nodded his head like an obedient child being promised a sweet, not like a 40-year-old man discussing a sum that could buy a new car outright. As if that money rained down from the Oregon sky. I stood in the kitchen, my hands paused over the kettle. From this angle, I could see them both clearly, framed by the doorway. I could hear every word. Chloe traced the stainless steel gleam of the refrigerator in the picture. She cooed about smart features, European design, a built-in wine chiller, and technology so advanced it probably knew what you wanted before you did. I thought about what $32,000 represented. I thought of the endless nights spent over my sewing machine, my fingers raw, altering wedding dresses for impatient brides. I thought of the years after Frank passed, when I took on cleaning jobs, my knees swelling to the size of grapefruits as I scrubbed the marble floors of people who never bothered to learn my name. This money was not an abstract number. It was drywall dust in my lungs and the permanent ache in my lower back. Then I saw it. A movement so quick, so casual, it almost slipped by. Arthur, without turning his head, without acknowledging my presence in the kitchen, reached over to the dining chair where my purse hung. My purse! He slipped his hand inside, his movements proprietary, as if my belongings were simply an extension of his own. He was looking for my bank card. I knew it as surely as I knew my own name. But he didn't find it. Instead, his fingers brushed against a set of folded documents I had placed there just that morning. He pulled them out, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face, which quickly melted into confusion. He unfolded the papers. I watched as the blood drained from his face. He went pale, a sickly, chalky white. His hands, the same hands I once held to cross the street, began to tremble. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Honey, it says here. It says the house is still in Mom's name." The silence that fell was heavy and absolute. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall sounded like hammer blows. Chloe's bright smile vanished, replaced by a sharp, pinched look. She snatched the papers from his grasp. Her eyes scanned the deed quickly, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and then, finally, to something I recognized instantly. It was cold, calculating anger. I turned back to the counter and poured the hot water into my cup, my movements deliberate and steady, as if I hadn't heard, as if my entire world hadn't just tilted on its axis, as if I didn't just witness the confirmation of my deepest, darkest fear. Inside my chest, something that had been cracking for months, something I had desperately tried to patch with denial and hope, finally split wide open. The son I had raised, the boy I had given everything to, was not just weak, he was a thief, waiting for his moment. That night, the house was still, but sleep wouldn't come. At 3 a.m., the time when all fears feel most real, I heard them. Voices. Whispers, sharp and conspiratorial, seeping from the living room, slithering under my bedroom door. I lay perfectly still in the darkness, my breath shallow. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't move a muscle. I just listened. "I can't believe she never added you to the deed, Arthur." Chloe's voice was a venomous hiss. "After all this time, living here, taking care of her, what is she thinking?" "I don't know, Chloe. I just assumed." Arthur's voice was weak, trailing off. "You assumed. That's the problem. We can't assume anything. She has a lot of money saved, Arthur. I saw her bank statements when I was looking for that stamp. It's just sitting there, collecting dust. Money we need. We have debts. We have plans. She's 68 years old. How much longer does she really need it? I waited. I prayed for my son to defend me, to say it was wrong, to say, "That's my mother, Chloe. That's her money. She earned it." But the words never came. Instead, I heard him sigh. "You're right. It's true. She has too much for a woman her age. She doesn't have any big expenses. It would be better if we managed it for her. You know, for her own good." For my own good. Those 4 words were a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. They hurt more than the thought of the theft itself. They revealed a truth I had refused to accept. My son no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as an obstacle, a senile old woman whose only remaining purpose was to fund his life, an inconvenience to be managed before it was too late. Chloe pressed on, her voice gaining confidence. "We'll try again tomorrow morning. We have to find that new bank card. She must have hidden it. We'll go to the bank. We'll take out what we need for the deposit on the fridge. Afterward, we'll just convince her it was her idea. We'll tell her she's been so forgetful lately. She must have approved it, and it slipped her mind. She won't even notice." I heard the scrape of chairs, the soft padding of footsteps moving back toward their bedroom. I remained alone in the oppressive dark, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my mind was suddenly terrifyingly clear. I thought about everything, every sacrifice, every sleepless night when Arthur had a fever, every extra shift I picked up so he could have the right sneakers for basketball, every dream I had deferred, every vacation I never took, every simple luxury I denied myself so that he could go to college, so he could have a better life than I did. And now, here he was, sleeping under my roof, eating my food, and planning to systematically loot my life savings, all while convincing me I was crazy. But something unexpected happened in that cold, dark room. I didn't feel the urge to cry. I didn't want to scream or confront them. Instead, I felt a profound, icy calm settle over me. It was the clarity of a woman who had just seen the bottom. In that moment, I stopped being Mom. I stopped being the eternally giving, self-sacrificing matriarch who would absorb any pain for her child. I became Eleanor Vance, the woman who raised a child alone in this house after Frank died too young, the woman who survived poverty, who built a life from nothing but grit and thread, the woman who had never, ever given up. And if my own son, my blood, thought he could swindle me, thought I was a fragile, forgetful old fool, he was about to receive the most important lesson of his life. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in months, I smiled in the darkness. I knew something they didn't. A 68-year-old woman isn't weak. She is wise. And that wisdom, forged in decades of hardship, was a weapon more powerful than any lie they could ever tell. Tomorrow would be a new day. And in this story, I was not going to be the victim. I was going to be the one who wrote the ending. Looking back, the signs had been there for months, like small, red flags I had willfully ignored. It had all begun 6 months ago, when Arthur and Chloe arrived on my doorstep, metaphorical hats in hand. Arthur had lost his job, another one. He was always vague about the details, something about corporate restructuring or a disagreement with management. Chloe, who hadn't worked in years, looked distraught. They were in dire financial straits, they said. They were about to be evicted from their trendy downtown apartment. They just needed a place to land for a few months. Just to save up, get back on their feet, and find their own place. He was my son, my blood. How could I say no? This house, which had felt so cavernous and silent since Frank's passing, suddenly seemed to shrink. I opened my doors, ignoring the small, tight knot of apprehension in my stomach. At first, it was almost pleasant. Chloe, in a surprising burst of domesticity, would help with dinner. Arthur fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. We ate together, watched television. I felt, for the first time in years, accompanied, less alone. But the normalcy was a thin veneer. Slowly, incrementally, the questions began. They were innocent at first, casual chatter over coffee. "Eleanor, you must get a decent widow's pension from Frank's union, right?" Chloe asked one afternoon, her tone light. I told her it was enough to get by. And you've got this house paid off, of course. She'd mused. It's smart, having all that equity. Have you ever thought about a reverse mortgage? My friend's mother did it, got a huge payout. I told her I wasn't interested. I like having my home be my home, not the bank's. Then, Arthur started. His questions were different, laced with a new, patronizing concern. Mom, are you sure you should be driving at night? The roads are so dark. Mom, let me handle those bills for you. It can be so confusing, all that fine print. I assured him my eyesight was fine and my mind was sharp. But he persisted, treating me as if I were fragile, as if I were already fading. He would explain simple things slowly, repeating himself twice. When I'd snap that I heard him the first time, he would laugh gently and say, "Just making sure, Mom. You know how you forget things. You know how you forget things." It was a seed. A carefully planted suggestion. The help escalated. One day, I came home from the grocery store to find Chloe in my bedroom, at my desk. She jumped when she saw me, a flush rising on her neck. "Chloe, what are you doing?" "Oh, Eleanor, I was looking for a stamp. I didn't know where you kept them." "My stamps are in the kitchen drawer, Chloe, where they've always been." She laughed nervously and scurried out, but when I looked at my desk, I saw the corner of my bank statement peeking out from under the blotter. She hadn't been looking for a stamp. She had been snooping. A week later, Arthur approached me while I was gardening. "Mom," he said, his tone heavy with false gravity, "we need to talk about your will. Have you got your affairs in order? I mean, it's important. I'm your only son. I have a right to know what your plans are. A right to know." That was the moment the alarm bells truly began to ring. He wasn't asking out of concern for my well-being. He was asking as an heir, impatient for his inheritance. He wasn't worried about my life. He was worried about my death. The days that followed were thick with attention I could barely breathe. Chloe became sickeningly sweet. She'd bring me tea I hadn't asked for, fluff my pillows, tell me I looked tired. "You should rest, Eleanor. Let us take care of everything. You've worked so hard your whole life. It's time you let us take the burden." Every act of kindness was a new bar in a cage they were building around me. Every question about my health, my memory, my finances was another test of my defenses. They were trying to convince me, and perhaps themselves, that I was no longer competent, that I was old and foolish. And then came the afternoon with the refrigerator, the $32,000 refrigerator, the casual, shocking reach into my purse, the discovery of the deed. Now, lying in my bed at 3 a.m., all the pieces clicked into place. The feigned concern, the snooping, the questions about my will. It hadn't been a series of strange, isolated incidents. It had been a campaign. A deliberate, calculated plan to assess my worth, undermine my confidence, and finally, take control of my assets. They were wrong. I wasn't old and foolish. I was old and wise, and they had just woken the sleeping giant. The sun had barely begun to tint the Portland sky when I rose. I did not feel tired. I felt energized, my purpose a cold, hard stone in my stomach. I dressed carefully, not in my usual housecoat, but in my good wool skirt and a silk blouse, the one I saved for church and special occasions. I put on the simple pearl earrings Frank had given me for our 20th anniversary. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, yes, but they were not defeated. They were sharp. I was not a victim. I was a survivor, and survivors know how to fight. I left my room and went to the kitchen. The house was silent. Arthur and Chloe were still asleep, dreaming, perhaps, of smart refrigerators and easy money. Perfect. I wanted no questions. I wanted no explanations. I made a cup of instant coffee, drank it standing, and grabbed my purse. I checked for my identification, my old bank card, and the new documents. Then, as quietly as a ghost, I let myself out the front door. The bank opened at 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:45, sitting on a cold concrete bench outside, watching the city wake up. The morning air was crisp. Everything felt normal, but I knew that after this day, nothing would ever be normal again. When the glass doors slid open, I was the first one inside. I went to the customer service desk and asked to speak with an account executive. "It's urgent," I said, my voice quiet but firm. A man in his 40s, with kind eyes and a nameplate that read M.R. Davies, called me into his office. He offered me a seat, offered me water. "How can I help you, Mrs. Vance?" I took a deep breath, the shame heating my face. It was one thing to know your son was a thief. It was another to say it aloud to a stranger. "Mr. Davies," I began, my voice trembling only slightly. "I need to protect my money. From my son." He listened. He listened without judgment, his expression calm and professional as I laid out the entire sordid story. The move-in, the snooping, the pressure, the $32,000 refrigerator, the whispered conversation I had overheard just hours before. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Mrs. Vance, I want to assure you, you are not overreacting, and you are, unfortunately, not the first person to walk into this office with this story. You did absolutely the right thing by coming here immediately." He explained my options. We could change my passwords, we could cancel my card, we could add security alerts. "I want to do all of it," I said. "Everything. I want to make it impossible for anyone but me to touch my money." For the next hour, Mr. Davies worked with focused efficiency. First, we changed everything. My PIN, my online banking password, the security questions. No longer was my mother's maiden name the answer or the name of my childhood pet. The new answers were random, meaningless strings of letters and numbers known only to me. Second, he canceled my existing debit card, the one Arthur had been hunting for. He issued a new one. "We won't mail this to your home, Mrs. Vance," he said. "It will be delivered here, to the branch. You will be the only one who can pick it up with photo ID." Third, we activated high security alerts. Any transaction of any kind, over $50, would send an immediate text message to my phone. But that wasn't enough for me. What if they try to impersonate me? What if they call? Mr. Davies thought for a moment. "Then we take one final step. It's the most secure." He proposed a plan that was both simple and brilliant. We would create a decoy account. We opened a new, basic checking account, and I transferred $500 into it. This account would be linked to my existing, old debit card number, which would soon be deactivated. My real money, the entirety of my life savings, we moved into a new, high-yield savings account. This new account was unlinked, as he called it. It was not visible on the online banking portal. It was not accessible by any debit card. The only way to access it was for me to be physically present in the bank with my ID or via a complex, multi-step verification over the phone that only I could pass. "If your son and his wife somehow get your old information," Mr. Davies explained, "and they try to log in, all they will see is this new checking account with $500. They will assume that's all you have. Your real savings will be invisible. A ghost in the system." I could have kissed him. He handed me the new documents. My true savings were safe. I had taken control. I had built a fortress. I walked out of that bank feeling 10 pounds lighter. I felt strong. I had protected my life's work without a single shout, without a single tear in front of them. I had used my wisdom. On the way home, I stopped at the bakery and bought a small box of fresh donuts. I stopped at the corner market and bought a bright bouquet of yellow daisies. I would act as if nothing had happened. I would act as if I had just been on my normal morning errands. When I walked through the door, they were in the living room, drinking coffee, the tension from the night before still hanging in the air. "Where were you, Mom?" Arthur asked, his tone attempting casualness but failing. "Just running errands," I said brightly, placing the daisies in a vase. "I bought donuts." Chloe looked at the bag suspiciously, but said nothing. That afternoon, she brought it up again. The refrigerator. Her tone was different now. It was urgent, desperate. "Eleanor," the salesman called. "That special offer, the 10% discount? It ends tomorrow. We have to decide now. There are only 2 units left." I sat in my armchair, sipping my tea. I looked her directly in the eyes. For the first time, I felt no guilt. I felt no need to placate her. I felt only a deep, profound calm. "No," I said. Chloe blinked. "What?" "No, I'm not buying the refrigerator. The one we have works perfectly fine. I don't see the need to spend $32,000 on an appliance. My decision is final." Chloe's face turned a mottled red. Arthur, sitting beside her, clenched his jaw so hard a muscle jumped. I could feel the shock and rage radiating off them, but I didn't flinch. I just looked at them, calm and steady. Chloe stood up abruptly, muttered something vicious under her breath, and stormed into their bedroom. Arthur stayed. He stared at me, his expression a toxic mix of disbelief, anger, and something I couldn't quite place, fear. "Mom," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Arthur. I've made my decision. You'll have to respect it." He leaned forward, his hands gripping his knees. "Mom, you don't understand. We need that money. We have problems. Debts. You're just sitting on all this cash. It wouldn't cost you anything to help us." "It wouldn't cost me anything." The words were a slap. He had no idea what that money had cost me. He had no concept of the years, the exhaustion, the sacrifice. "That money," I said, my voice as cold as the ice in his heart, "is mine. I earned it. I saved it for my old age, for my security, so I would never have to depend on anyone. Especially not on a son who only sees me as a bank." He stood up then. The mask of the concerned son fell away completely, revealing the stranger beneath. He looked at me with a coldness I had never seen, a look that broke the last remaining thread of my maternal hope. "Fine," he spat. "I hope that money keeps you company when you're old and alone, because we're not going to be here forever." He too stormed off, slamming their bedroom door hard enough to rattle the frame. I sat there, my hands trembling, my heart racing, but I did not cry. I did not break. I had done the right thing. I had held the line. That night, I went to bed early. I locked my bedroom door, a thing I had never done in my own home, and I slept more soundly than I had in 6 months. I was in control. And if they wanted to keep pushing, they were about to find out just how smart a 68-year-old woman could be. The following days were unbearable. The house was suffocating in a silence that was louder than any argument. When I entered a room, they would stop talking and leave. They ate their meals in their bedroom. The door closed. I was living with 2 hostile ghosts, their resentment a palpable fog in the air. But I would not be the one to break. If this was their response to being denied my money, it only confirmed I had done the right thing. It was never about love. It was only ever about interest. One afternoon, I was watering my patio roses when the old landline phone in the kitchen rang. It was a relic, but I kept it for emergencies. I answered. "Good morning. I'm calling from the fraud department at Pacific Central Bank. We're verifying a recent attempted transaction on your account. We need you to confirm some details." My blood went cold. "I haven't made any recent transactions." "Ma'am, a charge for $500 at an appliance warehouse was just flagged. We need to verify it was you." "It was not me," I said firmly. There was a pause. "In that case, ma'am, we need to lock the account. Can you please confirm your full debit card number and the 3-digit security code on the back?" And there it was. The bank never asks for that information over the phone. This wasn't the bank. This was a scam. And I had a very good idea who was behind it. "I will not be giving you that information," I said, my voice like ice. "If there is a problem, I will come to the branch in person." The woman's voice became urgent, nervous. "Ma'am, it's very important. You could be being robbed right now. You need to act fast." I hung up the phone. I stood there, my heart hammering. I walked silently down the hall to their bedroom. The door was closed, but I could hear frantic whispering inside. I knocked, once, hard. The whispering stopped instantly. A moment later, Chloe opened the door, her expression a mask of bored indifference. "What do you want, Eleanor?" "Was that you?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. "Did you just call me, pretending to be the bank?" Her expression didn't flicker, but I saw it in her eyes. A tiny, guilty flash. She shook her head. I have no idea what you're talking about. You must be making things up. Maybe you're confused. Confused. That word again. Their favorite weapon. I am not confused, I said. And I am not a fool. I know exactly what you're trying to do. And it will not work. Chloe smiled. It was a cold, reptilian smile. You're the one making this difficult, Eleanor. We're just trying to help you. One day, you're going to be all alone, and you'll regret treating us this way. She closed the door in my face. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my armchair in the dark, listening. I knew they wouldn't stop. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. A soft creak in the hallway. Footsteps, so quiet, trying to be silent. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I watched, my heart in my throat, as the brass doorknob slowly, silently, began to turn. But it was locked. I heard a sharp, indrawn breath of frustration from the other side. Then, the footsteps retreated. The next morning, after they left the house on some errand, I went to my desk. They had been thorough. My drawers were slightly out of order. My jewelry box, which I kept on my dresser, had been moved. I opened it. They hadn't taken Frank's wedding band or my pearl earrings. They weren't looking for jewels. They were looking for papers, bank statements, a new card, the deed. I knew I couldn't keep my important documents in the house any longer. I gathered everything. The deed to the bungalow, my will, my new bank account information, my birth certificate. I put it all in a heavy cloth tote bag. I walked the 3 blocks to Margaret's house. Margaret and I had been friends for 30 years. We raised our children together. We had seen each other through widowhood. She was the only person on earth I trusted completely. When she opened the door and saw me clutching the bag, her face filled with concern. She ushered me in, made me tea, and sat across from me at her kitchen table. I told her everything, the fake call, the hand on my doorknob in the dead of night, the ransacked desk. Margaret's eyes filled with tears of rage on my behalf. That boy, she whispered, shaking her head. Eleanor, what has happened to him? Money, I suppose, I said, my voice hollow. It rots people from the inside out. I asked her to hold the documents for me, to hide them. She took the bag without hesitation, locking it in the old metal safe in her husband's study. They will be safe here, she promised, hugging me tightly. When I returned home, they were waiting for me. They were both in the living room, standing, as if poised for an ambush. Where were you, Mom? Arthur demanded. I was visiting Margaret. Why? He pressed. What did you take with you? That bag you're carrying is empty. What was in it? The air crackled. They knew. They suspected. I went to have tea with my friend, I said calmly. It's none of your business what I carry in my bag. Arthur's face darkened. He strode past me, into my bedroom. I followed, watching as he began to search. He tore open my closet. He dumped out my drawers. He looked under the mattress. Chloe joined him, a frantic, greedy energy to her movements. They searched every corner of my room. And I let them. I stood in the doorway and watched them destroy my private space because I knew they wouldn't find a single useful thing. When they finished, breathing heavily in the center of the mess they had made, Arthur turned to me, his eyes burning with frustration. Where are the house papers, Mom? They are in a safe place, I said, my voice flat. A place you will never find. That house is in my name, Arthur. It will remain in my name. If you want something in this life, you will have to go out and earn it, like I did. He stepped toward me, his face inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. You are going to regret this, he whispered, his voice trembling with rage. You'll be all alone, and when you fall, when you need help, I won't be there. I would rather be alone, I replied, not backing down, than surrounded by people who are just waiting for me to die. The door is right there, Arthur. You can leave any time. He left my room, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell from my wall. I heard them in their room, arguing, doors slamming. Their carefully constructed plan was falling apart. I sat on my bed amidst the chaos they had created, my hands trembling, but my head held high. I had won this battle, but I knew, with a chilling certainty, This wasn't over. They were cornered. And cornered animals are the most dangerous. They grew desperate. A few days later, I was returning from the park when I saw the unfamiliar car in my driveway, a sleek, black sedan. I felt a prickle of dread. When I entered, Arthur was in the living room with another man. This man was in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He had the predatory smile of a shark. "Mom," Arthur said, his voice sickeningly sweet, a tone I hadn't heard in weeks. "I'd like you to meet Mr. Sterling. He's an attorney. He's here to help us. To help you. Get your affairs in order." I stood by the door, my coat still on. I did not sit. "What affairs?" Mr. Sterling stepped forward, extending a hand I did not take. "Mrs. Vance, a pleasure. Arthur has contacted me out of deep concern for your well-being. He's noticed you've been, well, a bit confused lately. Forgetting things? Misplacing important items? At your age, managing complex finances can be a real burden." My blood turned to ice. This was it, the final move. "He's here," Arthur continued, "to help you set up a power of attorney. It would just mean I could help you. Pay your bills, manage your accounts, just to lift that burden from your shoulders, Mom. They were trying to have me declared incompetent, to take legal control, to rob me blind, but this time, with my own signature on the paper." I looked at the lawyer. "A burden, you say?" "Mr. Sterling, my affairs are perfectly in order. My mind is perfectly sharp. I am not confused. I am being targeted." I turned my gaze to my son. He wouldn't meet my eye. "You would do this? You would try to have me declared insane? Put me in a home, would you? Just so you can get your hands on my money?" Arthur flinched. "Mom, it's not like that." "Get out," I said, my voice low and shaking with a rage so profound it scared me. "Mrs. Vance," the lawyer began, his smooth tone unchanged, "I really must advise you. Get out of my house," I roared. "There is nothing more to talk about. I am not signing anything." Mr. Sterling, seeing his easy payday disappear, snapped his briefcase shut. He gave Arthur a look of pity, handed me a business card in case you reconsider, and walked out. When the door closed, Arthur exploded. "You're being stubborn, Mom. You're irrational. He was here to help." "He was here to help you steal from me," I yelled back. "I understand everything, Arthur. I understand that you are not my son. You are a parasite, and you have brought another one into my home." Chloe appeared from the kitchen, her face a mask of fury. "You can't take care of yourself," she shrieked. "You are old. You need us. We are your family, and we have a right to protect you." "You have no rights here," I shouted. "This is my house, my money, my life." I fled to my room and locked the door. I leaned against it, listening to them outside. I heard Arthur punch the wall. I heard Chloe's voice, cold and determined. "She won't listen to reason, Arthur. We have to do it the other way. We'll have to get the guardianship. Mr. Sterling said with our testimonies and a medical evaluation, a judge will grant it. It's the only way. Guardianship. They wanted to have me legally imprisoned, to take away my rights, my home, my name, my freedom." I backed away from the door and sat on my bed in the dark. For the first time, I felt true, paralyzing fear. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my life. But with the fear came the rage, the determination. I was not going to be locked away. I was not going to let them win. I was Eleanor Vance. I had survived poverty, widowhood, and loneliness. I would survive this. I would survive my own son. When the sun rose, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had a plan, a final plan. They had underestimated the wrong woman. That morning, I woke with a strange, profound calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. I knew this was the day it would end. I dressed. I went to the kitchen. They were already there, whispering over their coffee. When I entered, they fell silent, exchanging a look I knew all too well. It was the look of conspirators. I made my own coffee. I acted normally. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. Chloe offered a tight, false smile. Arthur just grunted, his eyes fixed on his cup. He looked tense, like a man about to do something he knew, on some level, was deeply wrong. After breakfast, Arthur stood. "Mom, Chloe and I have to run some errands. We'll be back in a few hours." I just nodded. I knew exactly where they were going. They were going to the bank. They were going to try one last time to access my money, to find some loophole, to charm or bully some teller into giving them access. They were going to try to use the information they had, maybe my date of birth, my social security number they'd found, to answer security questions. I waited 10 minutes after their car pulled away. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the bank. I asked for Mr. Davies. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice low. "It's Eleanor Vance. My son and his wife are on their way to your branch right now. They are going to try to access my account. They will lie. They will say I am sick or confused. I want you to be alert, and I want you to call me the second they walk in." "I understand, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice all business. "The alerts are on the account. We will not give them any information. We will protect your assets." I hung up and sat on the sofa. I waited. Every minute stretched into an hour. I watched the clock. 9:30, 9:45. At 10:05, my phone rang. It was Mr. Davies. "Mrs. Vance, your son is here. He's with his wife. He's at the counter right now, claiming you are unwell. He says you had a fall, you're in the hospital, and he needs to withdraw funds immediately for your medical care. He's very convincing." I closed my eyes. The depth of his betrayal, the casual cruelty of the lie, was staggering. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice clear as a bell, "I am in perfect health. I am sitting in my own living room. He is lying. He has no authorization. Do not give him 1 cent. Please activate your security protocol." "Understood, Mrs. Vance. We will handle it. He's becoming aggressive. I'm going to have to call branch security." "Do what you have to do," I said, and hung up. I sat on the sofa, my hands folded in my lap. I waited. I didn't know how long it would take, but I knew when they returned, the war would be over. 2 hours later, the front door burst open. I heard a string of curses from Chloe. I heard Arthur breathing heavily, as if he'd been running. They stormed into the living room and stopped dead when they saw me, sitting there, waiting calmly. Arthur's face was a terrifying shade of crimson. His hands were clenched into fists. He looked like a man who had just been utterly humiliated. "What did you do?" he hissed. "What did you tell them? Why did you tell the bank not to give me access? I am your son. I have a right." I stood up slowly. I looked my son in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I felt no flicker of love for him, only a vast, cold emptiness. "You have no rights, Arthur," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "That money is mine. I earned it with my own 2 hands, with my sweat, with my sacrifices. While you were learning new ways to fail, you have no right to touch it, especially not by lying. Especially not by telling strangers I am in a hospital." Chloe lunged forward. "You selfish old. We took care of you. We lived here. You owe us." I laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "Owe you? You moved in here because you were failures, because you couldn't pay your own rent. I opened my home to you. I fed you. And in return, you snooped through my papers, you tried to scam me, you tried to have me declared insane, and you just tried to steal from me. You owe me." The silence was absolute. Their faces, pale with shock, told me everything. They knew I knew. "I heard you," I continued, the words pouring out. "I heard you that night. I heard you planning to rob me and gaslight me. I heard you last night, planning to get guardianship. I heard every single word." I walked to the front door and pulled it wide open. The bright afternoon sun streamed in. "I want you to leave," I said. My voice didn't waver. "Pack your things. Get out of my house. Now. Both of you." "You can't do this," Chloe shrieked. "We live here. We have rights." "This house is in my name," I said. "I am the owner. And you are no longer welcome. Get out." Arthur just stared at me, his expression a terrible collage of hatred, shock, and, deep beneath it all, a sliver of pathetic self-pity. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chloe grabbed his arm and pulled him toward their room. For the next 30 minutes, the house was filled with the sounds of their rage, drawers slamming, suitcases being dragged, bitter, whispered arguments. Finally, they emerged, each pulling a suitcase. They walked past me without a word. At the threshold, Arthur stopped. He turned. And for one fleeting, agonizing second, I saw the little boy I had raised. The child who hugged my knees, the boy who told me I was the best mom in the world. That boy was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man consumed by his own greed and weakness. "Goodbye, Mom," he said. I didn't answer. I just held the door open, my face a mask of stone. I watched them load their bags into their car. I watched them drive away, down the street I had lived on for 40 years. I watched until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Only then did I close the door. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, and the tears came. I cried for the son I had lost. I cried for the years I had wasted, for the love I had given so freely, and for the betrayal that had taken its place. I cried for the illusion of the family I thought I had. But as I cried, a new feeling rose up alongside the grief. It was relief. A profound, shuddering relief. The war was over. The house was silent. And I had won. I was safe. I was free. The days that followed were the quietest I had known in months. The house felt vast, empty, but it was a clean emptiness. It was a silence that was healing, not heavy. Margaret came over the next day. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just brought a thermos of her strong coffee and a plate of scones and sat with me while I talked. When I finished, she just took my hand. "You did the right thing, Eleanor. I know it hurts, but you couldn't let them destroy you. You saved yourself." I began to reclaim my home. I deep cleaned their room, washing the sheets, vacuuming away the last traces of their presence. I opened the windows wide, letting the fresh Oregon air chase out the lingering scent of Chloe's expensive perfume. I found a few things they had left: a pair of socks, a glossy magazine. I put them in a cardboard box and stored it in the attic. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Not yet. About a month later, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mom?" It was Arthur. His voice was different, thinner, tired. I just wanted to call. I needed you to know. Chloe left me." I said nothing. I just listened. "She left," he repeated, his voice cracking. "The day after we left your house. When she finally understood there was no money, that you had won, she said I was useless. She packed her bags and went to stay with her sister. She said she was done. She never loved me, Mom. She just loved the idea of your money." A part of me wanted to scream. I knew it. I tried to tell you. But what was the point? The damage was done. "Where are you living, Arthur?" I asked, my voice neutral. "A rented room. Downtown. I got a job. In a warehouse. Loading trucks. I'm trying to pay off my debts." "I'm glad you're working," I said. There was a long, painful silence. Then, "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I'm sorry." I took a deep breath. "Arthur, I love you. I will always love you. You are my son. But what you tried to do to me, what you did, it was unforgivable. You hurt me in a way I never thought possible. I need time. I need to heal. Please, don't call me again. If I am ever ready, I will call you." I heard a small sob on the other end. "I understand. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up the phone, and I cried again. But this time, it was a different kind of cry. It was the tears of closure. I began to build a new life. I took my old sewing machine out of the closet. I started making quilts. Bright, colorful things that brought me joy. I joined Margaret's knitting group, A circle of women my age who met on Tuesdays at the community center. I listened to their stories. Clara, whose children had put her in a home and tried to sell her house. Elena, who had fought her ex-husband in court for her pension. I realized I was not alone. We were a quiet army of women who had survived, who had fought back. One afternoon, I passed a local art supply store and saw a flyer, watercolor classes for seniors. I remembered, decades ago, before Frank, before Arthur, I had dreamed of being a painter. I signed up. That first Thursday, I sat in front of a blank white page, terrified. But the instructor was kind. He taught us how to mix colors, how to let the water do the work. I painted a simple tree with a wide, blue sky. It was nothing special, but it was mine. I had created it. I hung that painting in my living room, in the exact spot where a framed photo of Arthur, Chloe, and me used to sit. That photo was now in the box in the attic. The painting was my new view. Months passed. My life found a new rhythm. My knitting group on Tuesdays, my painting class on Thursdays. Mornings spent gardening, afternoons spent reading. My house was filled with flowers, with the smell of baking bread, with the soft classical music I loved. It was a quiet life, but it was a life lived in peace. One crisp fall morning, I was walking back from the market, my bag filled with fresh apples. I saw him. Arthur was standing on the corner, near my street. He looked thin, and the warehouse job had put muscle on his arms, but he looked tired. He looked old. Our eyes met across the street. He raised his hand, a small, hesitant wave. He took a step, as if to cross. "Mom!" he called out. I stopped. I looked at him. The man who had been my child, my greatest joy and my deepest sorrow. The wound in my heart ached, a dull, familiar throb. And then, I turned. I turned and I kept walking. I did not run. I did not look back. I just continued on my way, clutching my bag of apples, walking toward my home, my sanctuary, my peace. I couldn't go back. Forgiveness might come someday, but trust was a different thing entirely. A delicate glass structure that, once shattered, could never be truly whole again. I sat in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, looking at the small watercolor tree on my wall. I thought about the bank account, the decoy account, which Mr. Davies had told me Arthur and Chloe had tried to empty, now held a balance of $3.71. My real account, the one they never found, was safe. My house was safe. I was safe. I had learned the hardest lesson of my life. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, but it should never be suicidal. You are taught to give everything, to sacrifice, to put your children first. No one ever teaches you when to stop. No one ever teaches you that the most courageous act of love is, sometimes, saving yourself. My peace was non-negotiable. My dignity was non-negotiable. I had paid a high price for this quiet, simple life, but it was mine. I had earned it twice.